An original podcast from podlatino.com.
On February 1st, 1959, 9 people pitched a tent on the slope of a mountain in the northern Urals. They had chosen that spot deliberately. The incline would save them time the following day. They ate dinner, organized their equipment, and settled in for the night. When rescuers found the tent 26 days later, it had been torn open from the inside. The cuts in the fabric were jagged, made in a hurry. Everything else remained: clothing, boots, food, camera equipment. All of it was there. They were not. That is where the Dyatlov Pass incident begins. Not a clean disappearance, not an explainable accident. A scene that refuses to add up, 9 dead, and an official investigation that concluded the cause of death was an unknown natural force. In the Soviet Union of 1959, that phrase was not poetry, it was a surrender. The group was made up of students and graduates from the Ural Polytechnic Institute in Sverdlovsk. They were not beginners. Nearly all of them had experience on high-altitude expeditions, and the trip had been planned weeks in advance. The goal was to reach the summit of Otorten, a mountain in the northern Urals. Igor Dyatlov was 23 years old and led the group, an engineering student, meticulous with several previous expeditions behind him. The others ranged in age from 21 to 38. The oldest was Semyon Zolotaryov, a World War II veteran who had asked to join at the last minute. 2 women were also part of the group, Lyudmila Dubinina and Zinaida Kolmogorova, both of whom had more field experience than several of the men. The plan was to complete the route in 3 weeks and send a telegram to the University Sports Club no later than February 12th. If the message did not arrive, someone would go looking for them. The telegram never came. The early days of the expedition are documented in journals and photographs. The tone is that of a difficult but expected journey: cold weather, exhaustion, jokes among friends. On February 1st, conditions deteriorate. The group loses their bearings and drifts west toward the slope of a mountain called Kolatsiakal, which in the Mansi language means the mountain of the dead. The name predates this incident. Rather than fall back to the forest and make camp under the shelter of the trees, Dyatlov decides to set up the tent directly on the slope. It is a decision that investigators have analyzed repeatedly without reaching a definitive explanation. What is known is that they made camp on the hillside that night, and that was the last time the group appears together in any record. On February 26th, a search team of fellow students and soldiers set out for the mountain. They find the tent partially buried in snow. The entrance is closed from the inside. The cuts in the fabric are unmistakable. Someone forced their way out using something sharp with quick, irregular slashes. Around the tent, there are no signs of a struggle, and nothing suggests that any external force struck the structure. From the tent, footprints lead down the slope toward the forest, roughly 1,500 meters away. There are between 7 and 9 sets of tracks. The rescuers could not determine the exact number due to the condition of the snow. Some prints are from bare feet, others from people wearing only one sock. No one left wearing boots. They walked through snow at temperatures 15 to 20 degrees below zero without adequate footwear. The tracks reach the tree line and then disappear. The first 5 bodies are found in the days that follow, scattered between the tent and the forest. Igor Dyatlov is discovered 300 meters from the tree line, facing back toward the tent, as though he had been trying to return. Zinaida Kolmogorova is found 500 meters away in a similar position. Rustem Slobodin turns up between the two. Autopsies on all 3 list hypothermia as the cause of death. Slobodin has a small skull fracture, but it would not have been fatal on its own. Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonishenko are found near a cedar tree at the edge of the forest. At its base are the remains of a small fire. The lower branches of the cedar are broken off 4 to 5 meters up. Someone climbed that tree. Both bodies show minor burns on the hands and legs. The 4 remaining bodies surface on May 4th, once the snow begins to recede. They are found in a ravine 75 meters from the cedar under 4 meters of snow. Kolovatov, Thibaut Brignolel, Dubinina, and Zolotaryov. These 4 deaths are what transformed the case. Thibaut Brignolel has a fractured skull. The fracture is extensive. The forensic examiner compared it to the kind of injury produced by a car accident. There is no corresponding external wound. Dubinina and Zolotaryov both have multiple symmetrical rib fractures. The forensic examiner Boris Vozrojdeny stated that the force required to produce that kind of damage is not something a human being can inflict by hand, not without leaving marks on the surface of the body. There are no external marks. Dubinina was also missing her tongue and soft tissue from part of her face. Soviet investigators attributed this to decomposition and animal activity, an explanation that is technically plausible given how much time had passed. Specialists who reviewed the case decades later noted that the pattern of missing tissue is unusual, even accounting for those factors. Analysis of clothing worn by several members of the group revealed elevated levels of beta radiation, particularly on the garments belonging to Dubinina and Zolotaryov. The source was never identified. The official explanation was prior contamination from industrial materials. None of the group members worked with that kind of material. The official investigation was led by prosecutor Lev Ivanov. It lasted several months and included witness testimony, forensic analysis, and examination of the terrain. The case was closed in May of 1959. The conclusion: deaths caused by an overwhelming natural force. Some documents were classified and remained so until the 1990s. Among them were testimonies from people who reported seeing glowing spheres in the sky over the region around that time. The rescuers themselves had mentioned the same phenomenon. Ivanov stated publicly, years after his retirement, that he had been pressured to close the case and that he never learned what had happened. In 2019, Russian authorities reopened the file. In 2020, they published their findings. A specific type of snow avalanche had struck the tent while the group slept, forcing an emergency evacuation. The pattern of injuries, according to this theory, would be consistent with the compression an avalanche produces in an enclosed space. That conclusion did not satisfy everyone. Critics point out that the terrain does not present the conditions typically associated with that type of avalanche, that the snow around the tent shows no signs of an impact, and that several elements of the case remain unexplained: the radiation, the fractures without external wounds, the luminous phenomena in the sky. Today, the pass carries Dyatlov's name. It draws hikers who follow the same route. The photographs the group took during the expedition have been digitized and made available to the public. So have the journals, the forensic reports, at least in part, as well. With all of that documentation, with 2 reopened investigations and decades of analysis, there is no answer that closes every question. What is known is this: 9 experienced people left their tent in the middle of the night without footwear in lethal cold and did not come back. 4 of them died with injuries that medical examiners described as inconsistent with direct human violence. The clothing of at least 2 showed radiation with no explained origin. And the sky over the Urals registered luminous phenomena that multiple witnesses described independently of one another. What is not known is why they left, what they saw or felt that night that drove them to cut through the fabric and run into the darkness without stopping to put on their boots. Whether something came from outside or whether something happened inside the tent, whether any of them in those final moments understood what was happening. That is not in any file, and it likely never will be.